Hey guys, on this episode of Gaming and Collecting, I am joined by James from the Top Teners podcast to talk about RPGs throughout the years, including our first experiences and just basically a general freeform talk going over just a ton of RPGs. Honestly, so many that we're probably going to have to revisit this in the future. But until then, guys, enjoy us on this episode. Roll the music. So, another Alexless episode this time, guys. She's been you guys probably heard she's just having a bit of a rough time ever since her we lost her cat a few weeks ago. But she's doing better, but she's with her dance and everything, she's kind of it's just harder to get her all the time. So for this episode, I'm bringing back a returning guest. We have James here, formerly from the show Games with John and James, and currently now from the show The Top Teners. How you doing, James?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me. It's good to be back. It's good to talk again. We had you on the Games with John and James show a couple of times. It was a lot of fun. I will never forget you out sonicking John. That will be a moment in podcast history.
That's still one of the most unhinged podcasts I've ever been on.
Yeah, that episode it went hard. It went up, down, left, and right, and then decided to come back to Archie Sonic at the very end.
Yeah. No, that's a fun one. I revisit that every now and then just for the memories. But yeah, do you want to I've had a live on previously to talk about it, but do you want to go over the top teners again real quick or
Yeah. So we, Liv and I, have created a new show. It's called the Top Tenor Show. We're actually going live May 3rd. Our first episode launches. We do top tens on everything in gaming, from video game characters, villains, the whole nine yards. If it is within gaming, we are creating a list for it. And we have a little bit of a friendly competition. So you're going to have to see if Liv wins or if I win each week on YouTube.
knowing Liv, this is going to be a very competitive show.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, but I've got my gloves. I'm prepared to fight video game style.
Nice. Yeah, I'll be sure to include all the links to all your socials, the YouTube channel, and I'll have the thumbnail displayed properly in the thumbnail for this episode.
No, we appreciate it. And then whoever decides to listen, make sure you comment in the video, because we also want to do lists for you. And if you don't comment, we can't do it for you. We'll keep doing our own.
Nice. Yeah, top 10 episode theme podcasts are always fascinating to me because it's like a very challenging thing to constantly keep up with, but like when you get it down, it's like a very fascinating show concept.
The hardest part is getting the template down for the edit, creating the animations, text, things like that. Like, that's the hardest part. Once you have it, you are cooking with fire. And you know me, I do have a penchant for JRPGs and narrative based games. So that I'm gonna find a way, even if even if we were doing the top 10 worst games ever, I'm gonna find a way to have a JRPG there.
I mean, there's some pretty bad JRPGs out there, so I'm sure you could find one.
Yeah, oh man, what was the last JRPG on the 3DS? Fragrant Story.
Fragrance. I bought that on a whim, and then I never played it. And I think you told me about it before I played it. And I was like, oh, lovely.
On the bright side, it is a piece of gaming history, so it will, and it's a JRPG, so value will be there. But if you ever decide to play it, you only have to give up 8 minutes of your time.
True.
The fastest JRPG ever.
Is it as bad as like those Chemco RPGs though, where you just press auto battle the entire time?
You would enjoy a Chemco RPG way more.
I joke because I think one of the ones I played, Alphidia on 3DS, I legit auto battled the entire game.
Man, I still can't believe they churn out like not even five. It's like almost like 50 of them a year, and you play it, and it's like, am I just playing something that was made in RPG Maker? Like, what is going on here? And it's like this weird, like trippy experience, because if you've played one Chemco RPG, you have played them all.
They're so weirdly fascinating, though, in like a strange kind of way.
They have a loyal following. Like, shout out to the countries that love Chemco RPGs.
Shout out to our friends over at Retro Hangover. They love them over there. So,
Hey, I mean, if you need an RPG and you don't want to buy a AAA game, just go to Chemco. You can get 5,000 for $10.
I mean, one of them's bound to have an interesting story.
You fight God. While being God's son, the devil tries to sway you. You must get the sword of God. Translation Chemco.
And then here's these like cut and paste Final Fantasy things that you probably played at one point or another.
Oh man, I've been having a lot of fun. Like when you bring up Chemco RPGs, and I've been having a lot of fun lately. So if any of you are ever interested in games made by people, you can download the RPG Maker player for free. You don't have to have the game, and you can actually go and play a bunch of them. And I've been on this weird RPG Maker deep dive lately, and there's been some gems. There's been some moments where I'm just like, what?
There's some surprisingly good like fan made RPG makers. I know not all of them are RPG Maker itself. Like there's a couple other like engines that you can buy to make RPGs in a similar style. There's one I played years ago called like Toilet in Wonderland, which I still think is one of the most hilarious things ever because it's basically one giant shit post.
Well, I mean that's coming out. I think it's an indie game that's releasing, and it's an RPG no less. But you are in the world of garbage, and the game was actually created by janitors, like
Oh,
legit.
that's fun.
And I was like, okay, this is intriguing, but also garbage.
Yeah, there's some really interesting like games, and like I like games like that because there's no restrictions, so people can get really creative with stuff without having to exactly think about commercialization and like making them like profitable.
Yeah, like there it's weird to see inside people's minds because you know as well as I, like ebbs and flows. Like 80s and 90s, fight the dragon, grab the crystals, save the world. Oh no, the world has two worlds. Let's save both worlds.
Hmm.
Like it was very like if you look at the history through JRPGs, you can kind of tell where the narrative is going. A lot lately is fight God again. Oh no, don't fight God, but you fight the evil CEO. And it's fascinating with fan made ones because there's no rhyme or reason for where they're going with their narrative. So like you get hit with the twists, like when we got hit with them back in the day in Final Fantasy Tactics, or that first time like you are in the city of ancients, you've never played Final Fantasy 7 and you get to that moment and it cuts to the movie and you have arguably one of the most iconic scenes in gaming. Like that was a complete emotional curve, and I feel like we get that with a lot of the fan made ones and indie ones because they're not tied to that mainstream narrative, that ebb and flow that you see with all these games.
Hmm. Yeah, that I set Final Fantasy VII was definitely probably the most interesting. Like that game came out at probably the perfect time for JRPGs, and it
100%.
completely flipped gaming on its head for a while there.
I mean, there's when the show's over, I'll show you. I have to go to the other room to grab it, but there's a book all dedicated to like the actual like in-depth history behind the game. And Sony was so vested in the success of Final Fantasy VII. Like if that game flopped, PlayStation would not exist as we know it. Like it's wild, like the history behind the game.
So we kind of jumped into the topic without introducing it there. We're talking about RPGs, JRPGs in particular for this episode. I figured it'd be kind of fun to just kind of have a loose kind of conversation, just kind of going over them. And I figured if I'm going to start a kind of a little mini series of these, I might as well get the biggest RPG fan I know out of the podcasting community and bring James here. So I figured it'd be interesting just to start. Like, what was the first RPG you remember playing?
So the very first RPG I ever played, and actually like sat down and had the attention span to go through it, OG Dragon Quest on the NES. That was my very first one, and so my dad, he's the one who got me into gaming. Like we can blame him for my problems. Thanks, Dad. 38 years later. But he got me into gaming with The Legend of Zelda. Finally, like he was worried I was always going to break his Nintendo. He finally relented, and so my parents, it was the gratification system, right? It was, hey, if you got good grades they would do every quarter, I would get kind of a treat yourself moment. And I remember walking into the mall and walking into the Toys R Us, and I saw Dragon Quest, and you just saw the cover of it, and I was like, I want that. That is mine. I need this. And they're like, well, you got good grades, but you have to beat the game. And I was like, okay. And I did, and it was so much fun. Like I I would wait until I heard my parents go to sleep just to get extra playing time. Like I would fake sleeping, hear them pass out, and then like at 11 o'clock at night, I would just hop back in and till like 3 or 4 in the morning. And I remember just going to the school looking like a zombie, but it was worth it.
The original Dragon Quest or Dragon Warrior, I guess as it was at the time over here, that box art is iconic, like with the dragon just kind of like coming in like that. Um, it's interesting how like out of the 4 Dragon Warriors we got on NES, that's like the easiest one to find nowadays.
Yeah, it's like in the retro hunt, like it's everywhere, and it's like so inexpensive. So anybody can have it. Or if you're not a fan of retro like Bill and I, luckily enough, Dragon Quest 1, 2, and 3 were re-released on the Switch, so you can get that little collector's edition as well.
And I believe those are based off of the SNES remakes, which are also equally fantastic. Dragon Warrior 1 is an interesting one just because it is arguably the first console JRPG as we know it. Or at least it shaped what the console JRPG would be. And it kind of shows because it is a very basic kind of RPG, but for some reason it works with Dragon Warrior 1.
It it was if we look at it from like today's optics, phenomenally linear. It was point A, point B. Oh no, point B is in peril. Let's go to point C to fix point B to unlock the clue for point D. But in its straightforwardness, it kind of set the recipe, like you said, it was the recipe for success for other RPGs. And you still got that borderline tabletop because remember, like you'd walk down the stairs and it would literally say walking downstairs.
Yeah, good times.
So it was so much fun. And if you think about it in its purest form, that's what an RPG should be. So like this was like pure RPG, no filler, no I have issue, like I love, so random tangent, love the Final Fantasy VII remake. I love Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, but dear God, mini game, side content, filler, fluff, nightmare from hell makes you appreciate Dragon Quest or Dragon Warrior 1 all that more because no filler.
It's really funny too. Like Dragon Warrior 1 is a pretty easy game to get through. It's a little grindy. Like unfortunately, older games are kind of just like that. But it's funny. Dragon Warrior 1 is pretty easy to get through. Dragon Warrior 2 is brutal to go back to these days.
No, that's a slog. That one, oof. And even nowadays, like in Dragon Quest 11, the experience system in a Dragon Warrior or Dragon Quest game is punishing. And Dragon Warrior 1, you didn't have any metal slimes to bully. So you had to do it the old-fashioned way.
Yep.
And when you went to fight the dragon, when you went to fight the ultimate baddie, if you weren't it punished you. It was one of those, oh, you think you can beat me at level 50? You're cute, dead. Yep. It actually made you grind to go back and earn the win.
Yeah, that was such a different time. It's just so funny. Like you go from Dragon Quest 1 is a pretty great start. Then 2 is like, holy cow, this is how did the series make it past this one? But then you get to 3, 4, and 5, which is like 3 perfect games in a row.
Even 6. Don't forget 6.
6 is good too. It's 5, I think, was like they hit this peak, and then it was going to take them a while to like kind of reach that again. The 6 is fine. 6 feels like a step back, but it's still really good. 7 is fine. The 7 just has 7's a lot.
Whew.
That's especially if you're playing on PlayStation.
You wanna experience what we call an extremely long narrative? Play Dragon Warrior 7 on your PlayStation 1. 250 hours later, you have gotten through the base level of the game.
Yeah,
Good luck completing everything.
play the 3DS version. It's a better experience these days.
100%. And then 8, like 8
8,
kind of flipped the script.
yeah, 8 kind of brought the series into relevance.
I I remember 8 when 8 came out. That was one of the last games I had purchased for my PS2 because the WoW bug bit me, and then the MOBA bug, and I didn't come back to console gaming until 2017. Thanks, World of Warcraft. But like 8 was just the cell shading, the narrative, the voice acting that kind of paved the groundwork for all of the voice acting to have kind of that British or Scottish flair.
Hmm.
It's such an iconic moment in like the history of JRPGs because you and I both know, and all of you know, the PlayStation 2, that was the JRPG machine. That thing was still spitting out games until it finally ceased to exist in 2012 when they stopped production.
And I think even then they were still getting games until 2014 of all things because sports games, but that's besides the point.
Yeah, no, like because it was like Dragon Quest 8. I remember sinking just so much time. And you talk about, I think honestly that's the biggest thing with JRPGs, the pacing, right? Like we look at the pacing in Dragon Warrior 1, 2, or 3, OG Final Fantasy. You look at the pacing in those early NES RPGs, and it's all over the place.
Oh yeah.
And when you have Dragon Quest 8, like that pacing was perfect. The build was awesome, the suspense, and then every Dragon Warrior or Dragon Quest game, it always has that, we'll call it for lack of a better expression, the holy crap moment. And when you get that moment and the twist happens, you're hooked even longer. And it's such a seminal moment in gaming, especially for JRPGs, because it just kept pushing it to relevancy. And it was honestly that game pulled a lot of people away from Final Fantasy, because if you spoke JRPGs, it's like, oh yeah, I played Final Fantasy 12, I played Final Fantasy 10 and 7 and 8 and 9. Okay, well, what about Legend of Dragoon? What about Arc the Lad? What about Lunar 1 and 2? Like, come on, man.
It's funny too because you bring up Final Fantasy 12. That was a genius move from Squeenix at the time, packaging the demo for 12 in Dragon Quest 8. Because honestly, I bet a lot of Final Fantasy fans bought that game to play the demo, and then probably realized this game is so much better. Nothing against 12. It's not a bad game. I just don't understand it
Oh,
to this day.
OG 12 was a chore. Zodiac Age, when it re-released on the PS4, not so much a chore. Like you could tell they actually listened to us. They fixed the Gambit system. They fixed all of that. I mean, the narrative is still weird. Like you're literally playing. I will never. You play as Vaughn, and like it starts out like Vaughn wants.
The supposed main character of the game.
Like it's like, okay, cool. Like few hours, yeah, this is awesome. Like I'm getting into his story. Yeah, I've done my first little guild mission, and then all of a sudden he's basically the B character. But they never really let you take over who the main character is. So weird. So
Yeah,
weird.
it's weird too because it took place in the same universe as the Tactics series,
And Evilise,
which
yep.
which was unique for the time, and it's honestly like everything about 12 makes you feel like it would be like one of the best in the series, but it has so many weird little quirks to it that make it just it's hard for people to get into 12 for whatever reason.
It there it's the hook you moment. Like 12 never really gives you a hook you moment until you come face to face with like the magistrate.
Hmm,
And if we're coming face to face with the magistrate 15 to 30 hours in, that's bad. But then you
true.
have games like, look at Super Mario RPG. The hook you moment, you're fighting Bowser, you drop him off the chandelier, and then all of a sudden, giant sword
Sword.
just drops into Bowser's castle. Stars go everywhere, and you're like, I have to figure this out.
And the greatest like hook is you can go right back to the castle, and the sword's like, you ain't coming in here yet, and just sends you off.
Oh my god, Super Mario! I'm so happy it got the remake treatment.
That remake is
Oh,
near perfect. Like, actually, it's legitimately like, arguably like, I think it's actually better to play than the original in a lot of ways.
it's a one for one copy and paste with better graphics, more fluid mechanics, and then the ability. I mean, let's just call it what it is: the ability to do triple text,
Yeah.
icing on the cake.
Like I was always under the for years. This was a controversial opinion I had where I didn't see what the hype from Mario RPG was because I played Mario and Luigi first and Paper Mario, and I was like, I don't see what makes this one so special. And then I played the remake, and I was like, I get it now. This game is like perfect because I played the SNES version multiple times, and I was always kind of like, it's good, but I just don't get it. And then the remake was where I got it.
Yeah, if all of you watching, if you have not picked up the remake, like, and this isn't sponsored by the way, go grab the remake. It Bill said it best. It is a perfect experience, and it doesn't overstay its welcome. It is a charming, like the remake is what, like 20 hours if you want to get everything, if
Yeah,
that.
depending on how your play style, like if you're like me and you're a murder machine that kills everything in sight, it might take you a bit longer. But if you play normally, it's a quick RPG. It's not that long.
We're not going to comment on that. I just So Dragon Quest 11 was in my backlog forever, and that was the most recent game I beat. You give me find a mini medal or find an item to make you even stronger. Dear God, I found all the mini medals and then some. Made every piece of armor you could. Like, I get to the true ending, and I am just uber overpowered, dominant. And it's like, this feels good. It feels good to bully the enemies.
Yeah, like it's like you go back to Final Fantasy 9 and you do like the dragon grinding trick where you just kill grand dragons and get massive like over leveled, and then you just spend the entire game steamrolling everything as you can.
Oh man, now you want to talk about an awesome moment. Like 9, it it sucked that Sakaguchi left. It sucked that that was his like magnum opus, right? But 9, oh, like the optional boss Ozma,
Mm.
so much fun. And then it was what, I think what, 5 years ago, one of the arguably most incompletable mini quests within a game ever finally got completed with finding all the brothers and doing that event.
Mm.
Like, that didn't get completed until 2019. That is insane.
That is 9 is a weird one to me because I feel like it got completely overshadowed when it came out because 10 was on the horizon and it came out really late for PS1 and it felt older because the Final Fantasy series by this point had been going through a very interesting arc where like 6 really started it with this whole experimentation of like the formula, then 7 took it even farther, then 8 completely did its own thing.
Yeah.
And then 9 was like, let's go back to basics. Let's do like 4 again and make it a simple old school game that's easy to pick up and just has a really fun story that takes some surprising twists.
It's insane. And if you're a madman, I challenge all. I'm not going to tell you how to do it. You can do your own research, people. Try to get Excalibur 2.
Yeah. Oh, do it on a PS1 too. That's even more fun.
Uh, I did, and I will never do anything that bad ever again in my life. The amount of times my game was just sitting with the disc tray open was not fun.
I mean, speaking of not fun, getting Knights of the Round in a 7.
Yeah. Uh, like the chocobo like the chocobo breeding system to get to a gold chocobo was not fun, and it was time consuming.
Once you have a guide, it's not terrible. It's just like kind of like you just have to slog through it. The other method is, of course, you kill ruby weapon and emerald weapon, but who wants to do that
Hey,
without Knights of the Round?
hey, my challenge, if you play 7 again, Bill, my challenge to you, you have to replicate what I did. So my last time playing, uh, I beat Emerald Weapon, 0 magic other than the the summon for whenever like you would die, so it would just Phoenix and res your party. That was
Yeah.
it, but it was all mastered 4x cuts over my party, and I beat the Emerald Weapon regular attacks only.
Hmm.
That's my
That's fun.
challenge to you. And no underwater materia.
Oh, that might kill it for me.
So, but no, Ruby Weapon, man, like you want to talk about a game series with amazing optional bosses from here recently with Final Fantasy 16, the one Hunter quest with that red dragon, holy nutso, that thing was intense. To Adamant Toyson 15, like, hey, you want to fight a mountain today? Here you go.
So you're pro 16, right?
I I will forever die on this hill. 16 is in my top 3 now.
Okay.
My so 5, 7, 16. That's my top 3.
I don't know if it's in my top 3, but it's definitely in my top. I'd have to think about it. It's a favorite of mine. So 16 to me, like I've said a few times, it was the first Final Fantasy that I truly like had a good time playing the entire way through since like 10-2. Because I never played 11 because I only had enough energy for one MMO in my life, and that's RuneScape. Um, 12 is like a game that I really like certain aspects, and I just can't get into other aspects. 13 is 13. Um, you either like it or you don't. I like I like 13 2, 13 1 sometimes, 13 3. I'm good.
You mean you don't like Lightning Returns?
Yeah, I returned it to GameStop. I didn't actually return it to GameStop. I don't return games, but
Never. We never do that.
yeah, the Lightning Returns felt so. They were like, we give up. It's an action RPG now. Here. 14. I didn't play original 14 because it was broken, and I played the free trial for the fixed version of 14. It's good, but like I said, I don't have time for MMOs. 15 I liked until it fell off a cliff in the second half.
Hey guys, I'm going to be right back. I got to go do this one thing. Pops back. Wow, it's been a month since I've seen you. And it's literally like 5 minutes in the game, and it's like, what?
Yeah.
Uh,
And then 16, like from the start, like even though like I would prefer a turn-based RPG, I feel like 16 they managed to make the combat fun, and the story and world is really what kept me going because I love that game's story, and it felt like a Final Fantasy to me.
we For all of the hullabaloo surrounding it, all the haters who are like, there's no party, it's Devil May Cry fantasy, it's not a Final Fantasy. I respect your opinion because we are all entitled to it. However, you can't go in, games can't stay the same. If prior to 16 hitting, we knew Dragon Quest 12 coming out was going to be completely different from the rest of the franchise. You can't, turn-based is awesome. I love a good turn-based game. I love a good action RPG. But if you want what is arguably the most well-known RPG series in the world to keep going, change has to happen. The combat system, you can call it Devil May Cry fantasy all you want. It was fluid. It was engaging. The ability to go between 3 different icons, go through 3 different skill sets, it was so fluid. And I talked about pacing earlier. The pacing in this game, amazing. That amazing moment. So since this one's a recent one, I won't give spoilers. The amazing moment, end of Act 1.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
The end of the demo alone.
The voice acting, primo. The voice, so like you'll even in the trailer, you get to hear this. Like Sid, his voice actor, dude deserves whatever award we can give him. Phenomenal. Probably the best version of Sid we've ever gotten in a Final Fantasy.
Since 7, I guess. I'm trying to think out of all the Sids we've had since then. Like, I mean, I like Robin Williams Sid from 8 because he's Robin Williams basically, but
I mean, that is fair.
I don't even remember the Sid in 9, to be honest.
Nope, don't remember Sid in 9. Sid in 6, cool, kind of forgettable. Sid in 5, forgettable.
Sid in 4 is great. You can't
Sid in,
forget Sid in 4.
yep, Sid in 4 did good. It like 16 is the way of the future, and you can all love me, hate me, roast me. I'm totally fine any way. This series has to change. And 16, for all of us older generation of gamers who we prefer our turn based, we prefer, what we're used to. It's hard to accept change, especially with a franchise that's as iconic as Final Fantasy. But if they don't change, they're going to fall out of relevancy, because prior to 16, what do we get? We got Various Daylife. We got Harvestella. We got the Diofield Chronicle. Like, couple okay ones. Don't ever play Various Daylife. That was a train wreck of a train wreck.
Oh, Fantasian was the other one. That was a
well, Fantasian. Remember, Fantasian was Sakaguchi's own studio, Mistwalker.
Oh no, not Fantasian. I'm thinking of the other one that Square put out that it like flopped immediately. I can't remember what the name.
Oh, Babylon's Fall.
No, not that one. It was the one that looked really pretty but ran like bad.
Huh. Well, that is gonna. I don't remember.
I'm gonna look this up right now while you continue your story.
To the Googles. But like, Square had been striking out quite a bit, and for them to make this change, so many new people came to the franchise. And for me, that's what it's all about. I want everybody to experience a JRPG. I want them to be able to experience the old all the way to the new, and they got to. So if you have not played 16, you're missing out quite a bit.
Oh, Forspoken.
Hey, I liked Forspoken. I will die on that hill.
Did they fix it so it runs, it properly functions? Or
so it runs really smooth. The dialogue, I mean, the kryptonite of that game is the dialogue. It is very forced. It's very cringe. When you're dropping an F-bomb every other word just to try and be a little edgy, it kind of sucks. But what I'll give it credit for now, like if you go back and play it, the combat is amazingly fluid. The world building and development, like the story, because as you're going through the various areas, there's a lot for you to do. And you can start to discover and uncover more of the history and more of the why and more of the how. It's phenomenal. And then like actually getting to see the moment where the Tantas like fell into madness is amazing. And then there's a beautiful twist at the end. Like, you will appreciate the twist at the end. So I know that one, a lot of people hate it. I hear you. I agree with you on the dialogue. But if you can look past that, the game is gorgeous. And you want to talk about a game that lets you literally explore everywhere, actually, what we want to do in open worlds, but we normally can't. Forspoken gives it to you.
Okay, I might give it a shot at some point. I know the biggest problem Squeenix had like this last like year or so, they just put out too many games and like we had not enough time to play them.
Yeah. Shout out to the various creators that just game all day. Like, more power to you. I wish I could do that, but you released Star Ocean like last year alone. We got like the biggest remakes we got. If you like Super Mario RPG remake, Star Ocean: The Second Story R came out to modern consoles, which another glorious remake. And then let's see, we had 16 that came out last year. All the indies that came out last year. If you're an Armored Core fan, Armored Core, not really a JRPG, but you know, it kind of mirrors, I guess. I don't know where I was going with that, but I think there was like a total of like 80 big games I really wanted last year. And there's no way in God's green earth I'm getting through 80 games.
No, I can barely get through like 4 a year at this point.
I mean, remember I recommended what was the one I recommended to you? It was the Labyrinth of
So there was Labyrinth of Griselia or whatever. There was that one and Poison Control were the two, and
Yep.
I've only dabbled in both of them because I just don't have time to play RPGs anymore, sadly.
We're the RPG guys, but we're getting older and they're getting fewer to play.
Or like you get like other games that will come in that you just have more priority on, like right now I'm in the middle of my yearly playthrough of Persona 4 Golden. So it's like kind of just has taken over everything.
Yep.
But then also Persona 3 Reload just came out and I'm like, well, now I gotta play that. And it's like
this is a weird thing, but like we'll call it a backhanded complaint. We are feasting a little too good, game companies, which I can't really argue because I'm going to pick them all up anyways.
It's weird because it's like the nichest games like we're like swimming in right now, but like the big AAAs they are struggling to make right at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, Ayuden Chronicle, the one we've been waiting for is coming out. You can play the beta.
That's the Suikoden spiritual successor, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was either the director or the producer, like one of the main creators behind Suikoden, who left the company, went and did this, and then Konami, in their infinite pettiness, thanks Japan, they were like, "Oh, well, look at this, Suikoden 1 and 2 remasters."
Yeah, convenient. It's like we've only been asking for those for years, and then you put them out now just to get your petty one up. But
I mean, I'm very happy the PlayStation 3 store is still like, even though you have to navigate an encyclopedia to get to the point to purchase on it, being able to get Suikoden 2 there versus going to shell out $400 to $500 for it. Whew.
off topic, but have you noticed the hilarious irony that the PS3 store was the first one that was going to close and everyone lost their metaphorical shit over it? And Sony backed down, and now it's somehow won the Hunger Games of the old video game stores.
Yeah, I mean, the Wii's gone, 3DS is gone.
Wii U just closed, 360's on its way out.
Love Sony, hate Sony, love Microsoft, hate Microsoft. For all of the lambasting companies get, for a company like Sony to literally say, "Whoa, we actually hear you," and keep it there. Like so many of the titles like you and I have in our collection and you and I have enjoyed are readily available at people's fingertips for pennies on the dollar for what they are. Like I mentioned Suikoden 2. If you want to actually own that, you're spending $400 to $500. And especially with the new one coming out, we're probably going to see a price spike to like $650 before it evens out. Like that's insane to ask somebody to pay for that.
Yeah, especially for a game that it's a game that's that sought after, and they could have easily re-released so many times. And I mean, it's amazing that they finally are, but Suikoden's an interesting one.
Yep. No, that whole franchise is awesome. Like 2 chase game, 5 is a chase game. I challenge everyone to go play 4. It's the Black Sheep. Good luck.
Nope. You like pirates and ships.
What's that? You like the Navy? Suikoden 4, right up your alley.
Oh, and by the way, if you want to follow the entire story, you have to play the first half of Tactics, then play 4, then play the second half of, or maybe I'm thinking of the other way. Either way, the story, one of the games of the story takes place in the middle of another game, and it's a fucking mess. But I love it.
And then we got was it DS or 3DS for Tier Chris? I think it was
It
DS, right?
was DS, and I wanted to like that game. I don't know. It felt so half-hearted compared to the rest of the series.
It was still light years better than Lunar Dragon Song.
Well, any RPG that you get damaged by running automatically is like in the bottom of the barrel of like. So I put, as Chris Copleen from Retro Hangover likes to say, what game for DS? That never happened.
I don't know what you speak of.
Lunar Dragon Song. It doesn't exist. I've never heard of it. Yeah, that's down there with like Sonic Chronicles and like a number of other just god awful RPGs that are like, it's like how was it this bad?
Yeah. No idea. But you posed the question to me, Bill, so I get to flip the tables on you. What was your first RPG?
Well, I've shared the story a few times in the past. It's pretty well known at this point, but my first RPG was Final Fantasy VIII. It's the reason why I'm the eight defender, the eight fanboy, the guy that loves that game more than most people do. All because of a numbering mistake I had made as a child, where I really wanted to be mature, and when I wrote on my Christmas list that year, I wrote, "I want Final Fantasy VII," but I added an extra I by mistake, and I got 8. And I wasn't really upset because it was still a Final Fantasy, and hey, it looked better. The music was better. The gameplay was a little confusing, but it was a Final Fantasy, and everything about it was still fun. And because of, I mean, it took me like probably like 7 years to beat because I got the game at 4 years old. So yeah, not the best place to start RPG wise.
We're going to
But
give you the most confusing thing at 4. Good luck there, Bill.
yeah, I mean, hey, I got so much mileage out of that game because like back in the day, like when you didn't have money for games, RPGs were king because you just had so much like time in these games, and like by the time you finished them, it's like, hey, you can get another game.
It's the main reason that is I have a few games that I bounce between in between RPGs. Slay the Spire, card-based roguelike, or a new one that came out, Rogue Book, card-based roguelike. Like those are my bounce arounds to like give me a little break from a giant narrative, but you can't. Xenoblade Chronicles, I'm gonna just throw a random one out there. 100, you're looking at 100 and what? 50, almost 160 hours
That's a
for
lot of game.
the OG one. That is great. Like, don't get me wrong, I love to play like Super Smash Brothers with everybody. I love a good party game or like a quicker game, but 160 hours for one game, that'll last you, depending on how much you get to game, that's a month. That's 2 months.
Yeah, a year for some people.
Yeah. I'm looking at you, Bill, Mr. Only 4 or 5 games a year.
If I'm lucky. Well, kind of an asterisk there because I play a lot of 3DO games nowadays, but those are, I consider that work. Um,
I mean, fair.
but going back to 8 a little bit, I think the fact that I played 8 first is actually why I'm so like immune to like overly complicated RPG combat systems these days. Because playing once you figure 8 out, anything is possible after that.
No, the like the convolutedness of RPGs on the PlayStation 1, like 8, uber weird. I will say I love enemies leveling with you. Final Fantasy Tactics 8 do a good job of that. Recently, God Wars Future Past. I love when the game gets challenging as you grow because that's just cool and it makes you think more as a player.
Hmm.
But then just along with that, like for every 8 on the PS1, you had like, remember Legend of Legaia? Remember that combat system?
Oh yeah, the old dial a combo system that somehow worked way better than I thought it would. I'm not gonna lie.
That such a weird concept, but such a good story. And then Legaia 2 came out on the PlayStation 2 and womp womp.
There was a weird period there of like these really obscure RPGs coming out on PS1 and then getting sequels out of nowhere on the PS2 that sucked. like Jade Cocoon 2. It's nothing like Jade Cocoon 1. Um, Brave Fencer Musashi had Samurai Legend Musashi, which was just eh.
The
Um,
artwork, hey, at least the artwork looked cool on the cover.
it looked nice. The game itself was just kind of like this has none of the charm that I loved from the first one.
Oh, you went a completely different direction. No. Or look at well, the first Arc the Lad sequel, Twilight of Spirits, was enjoyable.
Good
But
game.
what was the one after that? The second one that released on the PS2? That one,
The one that decided, oh, tactical RPG like Sony's Fire Emblem. Forget that. Generic action RPG.
yeah, the fifth installment, because we won't count
Uh,
Arena.
yeah, because Arena is kind of its own thing. Let's see here. What is that game called? It's in my collection. I just can't remember what it's called right now.
Are
Gotta
you using
consult.
the Game I app?
Maybe
God bless that little app.
it does wonders for collectors.
Makes life so much easier.
It's
End
a
of Dark.
surprisingly End of Dark. It's a surprisingly cheap game because I had to scroll really far down to the bottom to find it.
Bill, you could have just typed in Arc the Lad.
I could have, but my brain was not thinking that far ahead.
Yeah, no. End of Darkness. Dear God.
Both made by the same studio too, because I think Cattle Call's the name. Interesting developer. They made both of them on the PS2, and the first one is really good. The second one, not so much.
Yeah, no.
You could tell Sony had no hope in it because Sony didn't even bother to publish it.
What? Oh, this is such a great game. Yeah, go to them. Have them make it. Yeah, we believe in you that much.
Yeah.
Um,
Speaking of Arc the Lad, though, what a great series that nobody talks about.
it is so tactical RPGs are my most beloved and favorite out of anything. Um, if Final Fantasy Tactics was mainline, it would be number one. Just straight up full send. And man, like I was jonesing. So Final Fantasy Tactics. So I initially kind of got into the RTS / tactical RPGs. If you remember Ogre Battle, March of the Black Queen back on the SNES, that was my first like true nugget into it. And then Final Fantasy Tactics really hit home.
Same developer, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yep. The original creator behind Tactics Ogre and Ogre Battle left, and because he had a bunch of ideas, and they were like, "No, you're just gonna copy paste, release the next iteration." And SquareSoft at the time was like, "Hey, we'll let you have full creative control, but we're gonna put the word Final Fantasy in this, and we'll put tactics in it as a way of paying respect to where you came from." And we get arguably one of the best, if not the best, tactical RPGs ever.
That is like to me like the definition of like a slow burn kind of seller because it didn't do anything when it came out, and then suddenly it just like blew up to the point where Sony had to hastily reprint it, and that's why there's so many more green labels than there are black labels of that game.
Oh my god! Like we mentioned, the enemies leveling up with you. Final Fantasy Tactics they did that. Like the story, the challenge. We all know if you. So I'll use an easy example: Star Ocean till the end of time. If you go a mana destruction build, you will literally cheese mode that game because no
Yes.
enemy has infinite mana. Like most RPGs have ways to be broken. Final Fantasy Tactics, they're very few and far in between, and the challenge is real.
That I think Tactics does the leveling up thing better than 8 because if you know what you're doing in 8, you can break 8 in half so easily.
Yep. And then what's the fight? It's in the church. The priest reveals himself as a demon, and if you aren't prepared, you have to restart the game because most of us. Oh, you're about to enter a critical area. Would you like to save? Oh yeah, sure. you get stuck in the loop of never beating that fight.
Yep. We've all been there.
Yep, I raged. Took me 3 tries. So 3 40-ish hour playthroughs to that point, and I failed 3 times.
It was always so depressing, like going back to Arc the Lad. It was really depressing too, because with those games, like we didn't get them like right away, like because Europe got them all, Japan got them all. We over here didn't get them until PS1 was already gone. Well, it was still around, but it was PS2 was already out by this point. And then Working Designs, God bless them, even though they ruined some of their games. More on that later. Decided here's all 3 of them plus Arena in this one convenient box. There you go. And then no one bought it, and now it's incredibly rare.
So I was living over in Italy at the time. So living, my dad was Air Force. So you shop at the base exchange. Think of it like a Walmart, TJ Maxx, multiple department store on steroids, everything together. And back in the day, their video game section was king. The Arc the Lad collection they had, and it was on sale. I picked that thing up $15.
Nice. I think I paid 50 like 4 years ago. Now it's like, let's check Game Eye. Check Game Eye. What's it going for now?
I think CIB is going for like $280 right now.
Let's see. Arc the Lad, $136 according to Game Eye at the moment.
Oh, I mean, that's not bad.
It's come down a bit. It's still the most expensive, it looks like, out of the big box. No. Lunar 2 is the most expensive.
Yeah, nothing is beating Eternal Blue.
Well,
that like, one price wise.
That's my 3rd favorite RPG of all time.
Lunar was the series is awesome. And then here recently, sucks for you iPhone users, but on Android, they re-released Lunar here recently, and you can play the entire game on your phone now without
one.
Yep.
Okay. Just a little tangent here. What did they have against Lunar 2?
I don't know.
Lunar 1's been re-released like 12 times. Lunar 2's been re-released once.
Yeah, this is what I'm hoping. And I know this is magical Christmas land because licensing, name rights, whatever. Like
Victor Ireland deciding whether he wants to be a dick or not, basically.
Right. So with a PlayStation Premium, like if you have, I think it's the max level tier, you get like the classics catalog, and they have some decent RPGs on there. Star Ocean Until the End of Time, Rogue Galaxy, Legend of Dragoon, Dark Cloud 1, Dark Cloud 2, and I could keep going. I'm hoping that Sony realizes the RPG craze is mega right now, gets all the licensing rights, like powers through it, like, hey, we have money, screw you, we're making this happen. And you just get, with your PlayStation Premium, the PS1 RPG collection. I would be lost for hours in that.
That would be so epic. That unfortunately, it's just one of those things where, like, because of how weird the licensing was then, like all these games are like lost in a limbo at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Which is, if you are like Bill and I, shout out to physical collecting.
Yeah, and even that's starting to get rough.
It's unfortunate with all the big conventions. I blame everybody having a side hustle. Like COVID popped off, retro market went insanely through the roof. I mean, I'll wholeheartedly admit I sold my collection for a silly amount of money, with the exception of modern consoles, and built it back up. But it shouldn't be this difficult. Like if you remember 2019, you could pick up Xenosaga 3, $40. Now you want Xenosaga 3? Get wrecked.
Yeah, now it's like, I'll give PS2 credit. Most of its games are still pretty affordable, even like the RPGs, unless you want Xenosaga 3 or Dot Hack 4.
Or Steambot Chronicles. Don't forget that one.
Oh yeah, that one's. See, I don't have that one. That's why that explains it.
That was the weirdest RPG I've ever played. Even weirder than Dokapon Kingdom.
Dokapon. Isn't that like the one that's like a board game?
Yep, they just I wouldn't say re-released. I guess it was we'll call it the second one in the series. I don't know, but it came back out for the Switch. So if you want to experience it without shelling out, I think it's like 150 right now. Grab the Switch one. It's like $30.
Yeah. You know what? A PS1, not PS1, PS2 RPG I just recently picked up that like I swear nobody talked about this game, and then it's suddenly now like it's like everyone's like coming back to it and being like, this game was great. Why did nobody play it? Oak Age.
Oh, yeah, that one was a good one.
I found it in a bargain bin like a month ago, just chilling there for like $12. I was like, this game looks familiar, but I like don't remember it at all. And then I like looked into it and I like posted it online and everyone was like, okay, that game's great. I'm just like, oh, cool, I guess.
So that one, I believe, because it's Oak Age the Shadow King, right?
Yes.
That one's actually available in the library as well for the PlayStation Classics. So
Oh,
if any
nice.
of you have never experienced that game, you want trippy, unique, engaging, has a few twists. Also, one of the very rare moments back then where games didn't take themselves too seriously. That's Oak Age.
Hmm. Yeah, that was like a weird like gem from like because the PS2, like we said, was like it was swimming in RPGs. A lot of them kind of went under the radar just because there was so many of them.
It was you honestly couldn't fail if you made an RPG on the PS2. Like some of them would fly under the radar, but you still always met your sales goals. Like even if Thermal Fantasia met its sales goals, and that
Uh,
game, oof.
that was Konami's first attempt at an RPG on the PS2, and I got my copy for $5 at a flea market.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. The only thing I'll say that I wish could have happened for us, the Japanese version, you could actually play the game with a guitar, not like the Guitar Hero guitar, like Konami's own little whatever.
Yeah.
And that would have been so cool for us to be able to do. I think that would have helped its sales.
So another PS2 RPG, like even Squeenix had a couple that like just kind of fell under the radar, and this one to me is incredibly underrated. Reddit Test Stories.
Yeah, that honestly, that's in my top 10 games of all time.
It's
Like,
funny because like it came out and then it completely just everyone forgot about it and it just kind of disappeared.
well, because it came out in what, '05, if I'm not mistaken, right?
It was late because Squeenix had a lot of RPGs on the PS2.
And it, you had your Googles. My turn to help us with the Googles. Yeah, January of '05 in Japan, and then September in North America. But you're talking '05. We're talking Final Fantasy 12. We're talking Dragon Quest. Persona 3, wasn't that '05? Was it 3 or 4 that was '05?
So 4 wasn't until '08. So I think I think 3 was like 2006 or 7. Like it was even later.
I like how we're having to Google this. Yeah, '06. Yeah, July 13th, 2006. 3.
See, I know 4 by heart. 3 not so much.
3 was like this weird one. Like, here, have 3. Hey, we're gonna do it again in Fez. Oh,
Yeah,
you're going.
here's 3 but with more.
Oh man. No, Radiata Stories, that game. So if any of you collect, it's like a $20 game at most. It is very inexpensive. You have to play the game through twice in order to see everything with it. And you want to talk about like just like a powerful story for like the story was so good and it didn't have any right to be. Like you looked at that game and it's like, I don't know. But then the story is just so gripping. You get to there's a choice you make where you're either going to be human, ally with the humans, or ally with the non-humans. And then you want to talk about recruitable characters like Suikoden? How about 176 of them?
uh Chrono Cross, something like that. Yeah.
And then the ability the ability to kick anything.
Yeah, that was always such a weird gameplay mechanic, but it was fun.
You could you could just go up to a town person, kick them. Hey, what'd you do that for? Kick them again. Hey, you need to stop this. Kick them again. I'm warning you. Stop. Kick them again. Guards, and then just engage with the guards.
Yeah. See, I love when games they play with your expectations like that. Like one of my favorites is Super Paper Mario, another criminally underrated game.
Mhm.
Um it has one of my favorite examples of like playing with like the whole like but thou must like kind of thing where it's like no matter how many times you say no, you have to say yes. My
Yep.
favorite is in Super Paper Mario. At the start of the game, Merlin will give you his little speech, and you can keep saying no. And if you get to a point, he gets like very distressed. If you say no the final time, it's just game over. It's like the best thing ever because it's like, oh wow, they actually went there.
Oh man, it's not an RPG, but like things like that. You remember Eternal Darkness, Sanity's Requiem?
Oh yeah, that game was just designed to like fuck with you.
Oh my! Me and my friends would let the sanity meter just completely drain just to see what would happen. Like walking in the library, all of a sudden books are circling you. Walking down the hallway and you're getting dismembered, but you're not. Uh, Showing a deleted save file, but it
Oh yeah,
wasn't.
the blue screen. The blue screen is still like one of the best ones.
Oh my gosh! I love it when games can break the fourth wall because it re-engages you. Like if you give that moment, and honestly, I would say like 2000 to like 2012, RPGs kind of did that. They always, quite a few of them had that moment to like make you like, huh, okay, like write out of stories with kicking Super Paper Mario. It it's refreshing, and more games need to do it. And I'm not talking the Hyper Dimension Neptunia series. Like, no, please, no
That's
more of those.
I don't know. I kind of like those.
They're pure JRPGs, which I love.
Then they're just so. I love that they're just one giant like metaphor, basically.
Oh my gosh, it's such a weird niche.
Like who thought? So who was like the person that was like, "Hey, let's just make a giant metaphor for the console wars, and then just make it nothing but anime girls."
No idea, but they're doing well because they still exist.
Compile Heart. They're still making them. I think there's a new one coming out like in a month.
Yep. God bless you, Idea Factory.
Uh,
What was another one they made? Fairy Fencer, the
Fairy
second one.
Fencer. I just bought the third one that's like a spin-off on Switch recently. I gotta play it.
So I've beat the first one. The second one that came out on PS5 was it last year or the year before? Picked that one up. It's on my to-do list.
Yeah. I think it's like Advent Rising or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I still gotta get that one. I have the spin-off one as
There's
well.
and you want to talk about like eating good? Like we're getting Ease 10 this year. Metaphor Refantasio. Atlas is not doing a Persona games. Drop your beer, everybody.
Well, they're making one. It's not coming out yet. Well, we are getting the FES DLC for 3 Reload.
Hey, I'm just happy. That is fair, but I'm just happy Atlas is content to do something that's not Persona, even if it's a one-off.
They're finally realizing they're like, oh yeah, we don't need to be constantly fighting for our lives anymore because now Sega's bankrolling us. So
Yep. I mean, speaking of that, Vanillaware, love them. And Unicorn Overlord, they went broke making. Ugh.
yeah. Oh god, Vanillaware makes like the greatest games ever. And nobody plays them until after it matters.
If you haven't, for you, Bill, if you haven't played Unicorn Overlord, it's on sale right now.
I bought it. I just haven't had time to play it yet.
Perfection. 10 out of 10, 5 out of 5, 100 out of 100, whatever rating you want to use. That game, start to finish, chef's kiss.
Okay, because I know 13 Sentinels has a great narrative, but the actual like RPG strategy stuff was kind of like the weakest point of that game in a lot of people's eyes.
What's this? You want to play what looks like an old game of asteroids for your combat? Please, welcome to 13 Sentinels.
But then you play through the story and you're like, Oh yeah, this is why I like this.
Yeah, no. So the story in Unicorn Overlord is there. It's not abundant. It's not lacking. It's one of those. It's enough to satiate you, but then the combat system, the world exploration, and the everything else lifts the game into the stratosphere.
So we're back kind of like around like where like Dragon's Crown or Muramasa were in terms of like minimal story and then just amazing gameplay.
Little more than minimal, but yeah, right about there.
Okay. Yeah, it's on my to-do list. I just have to sit down and actually play it.
Man, one of these days we're gonna get you hooked and vested. I'm just gonna, you know what? This is my promise. All of you can hold me to this, even if you never see me again. Which, well, I hope you do. Come check out my show. But I'm gonna send Bill a message every day. It's just gonna be a game, like no context behind it. It's just gonna be Unicorn Overlord, Dark Cloud 2, Cry Machina, Crystar.
I've played some of those.
And I'm just going to keep doing it until you're finally like, all right, James, I'm going to give one of these 5,000 messages a shot.
I mean, it's like I will play them just when I have time. Unfortunately, I just don't have time anymore because being an adult sucks sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I feel that in my bones.
So an era of RPGs to me that's super fascinating, mostly just because I feel like it was they were so scarce during this era, even though we got a ton of them. The PS3 360 era.
Yeah, that was the weird schism, I feel, because 360 like was off to the races. Sony fumbled quite a bit at the start with the PS3.
But then made the world's greatest comeback.
Yeah, it's surprising that they won that iteration because 360 could have won, but they dropped the ball.
They gave up at the end.
But you got some gems like Lost Odyssey on the 360. Oh my goodness. Such an
Dragon,
awesome game.
Tales of Vesperia. Like the 360 started out like strong with like the RPG game.
Eternal Sonata. Yep.
Mag-
Wasn't Artanelico Melodies of Koga? That one was on there on 360 as well, right?
there was that one. There was so Eternal Sonata got ported later on, so they lost that one. They also had the original version of Star Ocean: The Last Hope before that also got brought over. Um, Magna Carta 2, if you want a really bizarre Korean RPG.
Hope you like Rings.
It's a fun game, but oh, it's interesting. The Last Remnant, that was another one which doesn't really function on the 360. So if you want to play that game, buy the Switch or a modern remaster because it plays so much better.
Yep. Those oh man.
Infinite Undiscovery, other known as this is Tri-Ace's tech demo for how to make Star Ocean 4.
Oh man. And then when the PS3 came in, obviously we have the 13 trilogy. What man, what was it? It's on the tip of my tongue. There were two of them. It was an over-the-top mash from multiple franchises into one, played like Disgaea, but there were two games and it was just insanely silly. Forget what the name of it is. It is on the tip of my tongue.
It was a tactical RPG.
It was
on PS3.
So you had those. Then we had the White Knight Chronicles 1 and 2. Those were fun.
The second one was. The first one was a little bland for my tastes. They kind of fixed it with 2. And 2 comes with a free copy of 1, so it's like, why bother buying 1?
I don't need you.
That was a really weird marketing choice.
Mugen Souls, that's what it was.
Okay. Yeah, that was an interesting one.
And you can that got re-released on the Switch, but you have to get it through Play Asia, unfortunately. Or fortunately.
If you want to talk about my favorite obscure RPG on PS3 that is getting a bit of love now just because its aesthetic is like timeless. 3D dot game heroes.
That game was so much fun.
That game I bought legit out of a bargain bin at a GameStop like a month after it came out. And then it like spiked up to like it was like a triple digit game for a while there. Mostly probably because of the Scott the Woz connection, because he used that one song as his ending music for a while.
Yep.
But yeah, that game was really hard to find for a bit. It is such an interesting like Zelda clone.
You're at full health. Would you like a sword that hits everything? Okay.
Yeah, here you want the literal Buster Sword as your default weapon in this kind of game. Here you
It
go.
Oh man, there's so many bangers on the PS3. And if you get it like if you want the backwards compatible one, people, I wish you the best of luck. It will definitely work. Just be prepared to learn how to apply thermal paste. But if you get like a super slim, it's it's a champ. Those
And you
those
can
things last.
and you can play with the slidey door because that's still my favorite stupid thing about that console.
Boop, boop, boop. Like what?
Just like you can just open and close it at will.
Oh man, no, like it's weird. I think the reason why that generation gets forgotten is because we still had stuff coming out on the PS2. Like you had Odin Sphere still come out. You had the Persona 3, Persona 4. You had what is it? Eternal Poison. That one came out like towards the tail end of the life. You just had
Like
you had
7 Shin Megami Tensei games.
yeah. You still had so many masterpieces coming out on your prior console because there's no reason for Sony to stop. It was still that good.
And a lot of those RPG developers, particularly the Japanese ones, they hadn't really figured out the new hardware yet. So they were still, it was just for games that big, it was just easier just to put out the games on older hardware.
Yeah, that was honestly, I think for that lost generation, that was the most difficult thing. Like developing a game for the PS3. Good luck there, guys.
Well, I mean, it's like, because you think about it, and like the RPGs really didn't start kicking off on the PS3 until around like 2009 ish, I want to say.
Yeah, even because when did 13 come out? Was 13 9 or 10?
I think it was 9.
Yeah, that was like the first like big blow back to Microsoft.
There was that, and then we got, so one of Microsoft's biggest like wins was they had gotten Tales of Vesperia, which the Tales series has always been kind of interesting. Like a lot of people think of it as a Nintendo series because they love Symphonia, and Symphonia came out on GameCube. But then like Abyss and Legendia were PS2 games, and then suddenly it's on 360 with the with Vesperia. But then PS3 gets like 4 of them.
Tales of Zillia 1 and 2.
Graces, Ziastara.
Yep.
That was about it for Tales on PS3.
No, Zillia 1 and 2 are masterpieces.
I love Graces. Like Graces gets a lot of hate, but I love that game. Like it is a very unique style and kind of a turn for the series.
Mm-hmm. And then you got the combo pack with Tales of Symphonia on the PS3 and its sequel, which
We
was
don't need to
on.
talk about the sequel.
Yeah, I mean, or if you had a Wii, you could play the sequel there and the sequel to Fire Emblem Path of Radiance.
Yes. Oh yeah. Radiant Dawn. That So the Fire Emblem series to me, I guess we can let's round back to Fire Emblem for a bit. Um that series is like Nintendo tried so hard for so many years. Like they Smash Brothers Melee comes out. Originally they were going to dummy out Roy and Marth from the game for America. They were like, they won't know what these characters are. Let's just take them out. And then the last second they decided against this, thankfully. And we get Roy and Marth, and everyone's like, "Who are these guys?" So Nintendo just kind of throws their luck out and is like, "All right, here, have Fire Emblem 7. We're just gonna call it Fire Emblem, and don't worry, these characters aren't in this game, but you'll still like it."
Hey, shout out to the Game Boy Advance because we had what Fire Emblem. You had what was the we had what 2 or 3 on the Game Boy Advance. Then we had
So there was, well, we only got 2 because so there's Fire Emblem: The Binding Blade, which is I think the Roy game that we didn't get. There's the Blazing Blade, which is 7, the one we got, And then there was Sacred Stones, which was
Yep.
completely its own original thing. Then they had Path to Radiance on GameCube, and that game nobody bought it, and it's tragic because now it's $200 game.
Yep. I have it sitting back there.
I got it right at during the boom period and paid 200 for it, and then it dropped all the way down to 90, and I was like, shit. And then it's since jumped back up to 200, so I feel a little justified. But
No, like such a unique series. I'm a big
I
so permadeath is Fire Emblem permadeath hand in hand.
now, are you anti-casual mode or are you fine with it existing?
Uh, so I want everybody to enjoy the game, and I know people are not as much of a me and Dark Souls we're not friends, but if I want to challenge myself and also hate my life, I'll go play Seventh Saga.
Yeah.
So I'm fine with the casual mode being there because people get to experience it, and the more people that gravitate, like look at a Fire Emblem Three Houses,
That's
huge
one of my
success.
favorite games of all time. So,
And then because of it, like we got Fire Emblem Engage. There's more plans for more Fire Emblem. I
well,
want.
you got to think about it too. Like Awakening, that
Mhm.
was like the last resort. Series is dead. We're giving it one last try. If this game fails, the series is done. And then it came out at the legitimate perfect time during the 3DS's early struggles, and it becomes this massive hit in America and Japan. And then suddenly Fire Emblem is now like one of the top series at Nintendo, and they're getting regular games ever since.
As they should.
Even if I, even if it's kind of been like, I didn't really like Fates. Um,
Fates was love or hate. Shadows of Valencia, love that one.
that was good. I love Three Houses. Engage. I like the gameplay. I can't stand the character designs.
Yeah, they lean too heavily into the anime aspect, I feel.
They look like VTubers. It's weird.
Yeah, I mean,
Then
hot
I love the look of Three Houses too.
I'm a big fan of when a game looks cel shaded. We talked about it, Dragon Quest 8 or even Okami. Like remember when Okami came out?
Hmm.
That game was so beautiful. Like I I could play a potato. I could play a NES RPG or SNES RPG. Totally fine. Like graphics don't really engage me as much as story or like the gameplay. But when your game looks beautiful and it literally looks like you've opened up your own personal like storybook, you win.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
And then
Um.
now look at us. We just have every RPG known to man.
Yeah, we do. Um. So interestingly, we had mentioned a game called Harvestella earlier. Not the game I'm going to talk about, but I just wanted to use it as a segue point because it's basically farming the RPG. Um. What are your thoughts on like pseudo RPGs in the sense of like Harvest Moon or like Story of Seasons?
Like your Rune Factories, Story of Seasons. I see the appeal for them. Um because a lot of people are big fans of that cozy style game. But those same people, if you put just a nugget of RPG in it, they get even more hooked.
Well, because that was kind of like what Rune Factory was, where it was like, let's take Harvest Moon and like just legit make it an RPG.
Hmm. Like I'm fine. So not my cup of tea. Do I own them? 100%. If any of you see a copy of Harvestella, go pick that one up. That one is fast becoming the Godzilla from PS4,
Yes,
but
it
for
is.
Switch.
I mean, Harvestella wasn't bad. It was just kind of like, it's like this was an interesting idea. They just didn't go far enough with it.
And they spread themselves too thin because like when Harvestella released, we also like Diofield Chronicle was recent. The various Daylife fiasco. Hey,
Yeah.
pay $20 for a phone game. Oh, just kidding. This game is awful. It's free now.
Also, like the previous year, where they had already given us like Bravely Default 2, Live Alive remake, Triangle Strategy.
Love Triangle Strategy. I love if you are a giant douche in the game and you want to continue to be a douche, and you don't get your party's buy-in, and they're just like, no, we're not going to do that, and you don't get to do that. Like, such a cool little mechanic.
It kind of reminds me of like in Persona 4 and like 5, where it's like you can do like the player route and just date all the girls, but then like Persona 4 Golden and 5 decided, oh yeah, we're gonna punish you really hard if you do this.
Yep. It oh man. It Square Enix is a I'll throw the hot button topic. They're a phenomenal company. Do they get greedy every now and then? 100%. Do they do some boneheaded decisions? Quite a bit. Look at their recent history. We're going to make the best live service game available to you. It's called Babylon's Fall. That's a coaster now. I have a copy sitting behind me. Legit coaster. Will be
It can spend time with the crew and Mag.
oh, oh man. It like love them or hate them. Without them, the JRPG industry would be very weird, I feel.
Well, yeah, because like Final Fantasy legit changed everything over here. I mean, yeah, Dragon Quest is always going to be bigger in Japan because they just love Dragon Quest over there, but Final Fantasy literally changed everything in America.
Mm-hmm. Like, whoever's listening to this, if you really want to let something sink in, if it wasn't for Final Fantasy and the successors, if it wasn't for that, you wouldn't enjoy gaming as you enjoy it. Platformers were fun. Like Super Mario 1 was fun. Mega Man 1 was fun. Like Ghouls and Ghosts, Castlevania, still good times. But those have a finite plateau. And then eventually they go away. Yes. RPGs last. And it's that impact that companies took notice of. And they were like, hey, we're going to replicate this even with our Marios, our Sonics, or whatever. Like, this may be just my idea. I don't know, but I will die on the hill. Like, without RPGs, the gaming industry would be vastly different.
Oh yeah, no, 100% for sure. What I love about RPGs is there's literally an RPG for everybody. Like, you don't have to be like a diehard RPG fan to truly appreciate at least one game in this massive genre.
And nowadays the starting point is just so much better. Game we forgot to mention in that Lost Generation, Ni no Kuni. Everybody and their mother knows Howl's Moving Castle, Ponyo, My Neighbor Totoro. Like, everybody knows Studio Ghibli's movies and animation.
Spirited Away, like, just classics.
How would you like to play a game that literally looks like a Studio Ghibli movie? Oh, by the way, here's Ni no Kuni. You have that to like your dark, gritty Shadow Hearts Covenant.
Shadow Hearts is a series that like didn't get the love it deserved when it came out, and then nowadays it's like this hidden gem. Especially its pseudo, well, though it is a prequel, they're the same world, but Clodelka.
Yeah, Clodelka. Yeah, that like, I wish, for me personally, I wish we got more of that, because like we had Clodelka, we had Parasite Eve. Like, I wish we got more games that had that kind of that darker feel to them.
Kind of bridging the gap between JRPG and survival horror game.
100%.
Like, the biggest problem with Clodelka to me is I love that game, but you can clearly tell there was a power struggle between one side really wanted to make Resident Evil and the other side really wanted to make a JRPG. You can tell that the JRPG side won because Shadow Hearts completely drops all the survival horror elements and goes in favor of just general gothic horror, which, to be fair, I think worked better in the long run. But that first game is such an interesting experiment.
Honestly, like, I love that we're bouncing between eras. What I love most about the PlayStation 1 is people were willing to take chances. So on my old show, Games with John and James, John and I, we talked about it. Last year, $180 billion was the video game industry's profit. More than every major sports organization, North America, Europe, China, everywhere, right? More money in revenue than all sporting organizations across the world. That's
Oh yeah.
insane. And because of it, we're starting to see a little bit of separation. Instead of the risks, instead of the unicorn overlords, which is like a once in every 7 to 8 year kind of thing, we're starting to let the bottom dollar dictate what we're making. And back in the PlayStation 1, like, because like nowadays, if a company makes a flop, hey, thanks for playing. Like, look at Forspoken, Luminous, like Forspoken flopped, regardless of the praise I talked about it. Like I gave it earlier in the episode, like it flopped. Luminous got fully absorbed into Square Enix, and they're not going to get to make an independent game ever again.
Nope.
Back in the day, you had a flop. Hey, it's okay. We're going to go back to the drawing board. Let's make something awesome.
I mean, you think about it like Phantasy Star. Phantasy Star 1, phenomenal game. Phantasy Star 2, also a great game. 3, total flop. But then they regrouped, and 4 is one of the greatest JRPGs ever made.
Mm-hmm. We need more of that risk. And I think, I mean, like in a talk about JRPGs, that's something we definitely got to talk about, because
I mean, Star Ocean 5, legit, I thought it killed the series. And then 6 comes out. It's a step in the right direction. And then we got a remake, and things are looking good again.
You can play the whole Star Ocean library on current consoles, and that is a testament. Like how do I want to word this? I don't want to see companies stagnating, and that's a lot of what's happening. Because I mentioned it earlier, Ys 10, we're going to get Ys 10 Nordic. And this is Adol when he's 19, and it's going to have like that Nordic kind of Norse-ish stuff with his with the other character that they introduced in the trailer. But it's literally no Ys game has felt different since Ys 8 Lacrimosa of Dana. It literally feels like I'm just playing Lacrimosa of Dana in a new skin. Like Monstrum Nox, I'm playing Lacrimosa of Dana in a demon skin. And I don't want 10 to do that. And I think that's where like we're feasting too good that companies are just churning stuff.
Which is interesting too, because then like you get like an RPG that was born entirely out of a joke on Twitter. Yakuza Like a Dragon.
Yep.
Who would have thought a Yakuza turn-based RPG that's essentially almost like Persona 5 in a lot of ways? Convenient Sega owns both of those. You'd go from like one of the goofiest yet amazing beat 'em up series of all time to like this turn-based RPG that still has the charm that made Yakuza the cult classic, now just like mainstream series it is, and it would work perfectly.
It's a testament to a company willing to take a risk, and like that risk paid off, because earlier this year Infinite Wealth came out. And Infinite Wealth, I've played Yakuza Like a Dragon, haven't played any of the other series. Own them, just never got around to them because the backlog is endless.
Yeah.
But like Infinite Wealth, I got to play a little bit of it. It doesn't feel like it is a copy paste. And I think honestly, that's one of the biggest reasons Final Fantasy is so relevant. 16 is not a copy paste of 15, which is not a copy paste of 12, which is not a copy paste of 10-2, which is not a copy paste of 10. Like, and
I love that you just skipped 13 entirely.
So that's where they messed up. So 13, I like 13. Like, is it the hallway simulator everyone wants to talk about? Yes, it is a very linear game up until the end, but you can say the same for 10. You can say the same for 9. You can say the same for 7. You can say the same for 8. If you think about it, a lot of Final Fantasy game, like we'll just say all Final Fantasy games are A to B until you hit a moment in the game where the world is your oyster.
I should preface, I don't hate 13. I hate 13.3. But I don't hate 13 or 13.2. I just like to joke about it.
It's 13.2, huge improvement. They listened.
13.2 is a legitimately great game.
It's phenomenal. And they listened. They give you a wholly unique story for it. But I think what ultimately did the 13 trilogy in is it was kind of copy paste.
Well, Square was so up their butt about the Fabula Nova Crystallis shit, and like they couldn't let it go.
This is what happens when Nomura is at the helm. Like, let him retire, have a cabin in the woods, and churn Kingdom Hearts games out, but not touch anything else.
Yeah.
I mean, full stop, full send. which is why like one we had the weird mention of earlier, like Sakaguchi came back to super relevancy. It's weird that it's only on iOS. So if you have an iPad, if you have a Mac, MacBook, or an iPhone, you can play Fantasian.
Yeah, I mean it's a good game.
Did you? And if any of you are familiar with how much love he pours into his games, everywhere you go in that world in Fantasian, and we're talking an iOS-based game, is a hand-built diorama. 150 hand-built dioramas converted into game. That's insane. And one of them was made by Akira Toriyama.
R.I.P. the legend.
Like, oh my gosh. And you want to, that was wholly unique. Like, yeah, you have turn-based battles. It's cool that you can manipulate your abilities to hit multiple enemies, but the dimension, like, really? Like, oh, you've fought this enemy before? Cool. You don't have to fight it again. Put it in the dimension. Put it in the dimension. And you can literally explore and enjoy the beautiful world. Caveat, though, when the dimension was full, you had to fight all those things at once. So cool way to farm tons of XP, too.
No, that was a great game. Actually,
oh my gosh.
A JRPG that we didn't even we were talking about the PS3 era. Well, the 7th gen in general, and like how a lot of RPGs completely went under the radar. I just had one that popped in my head that's one of the most unique, another Tri-Ace game, and nobody really talks about it. Renaissance of Fate or Resonance of Fate or whatever it is.
Oh, Resonance of Fate. Yeah, no, that one was awesome.
The gunslinging RPG.
Hard to master, but when you learn the combat controls, who doesn't want to be Keanu Reeves?
I know, it was like I was so that was a game that I feel like came out at like just a weird time for RPGs, because like everything was trying to be super like futuristic and edgy, and like you weren't getting a lot of old stuff. So like this like RPG that comes out and it's like, hey, look, it's the Gunslinger RPG. It's like all guns and stuff, and it's kind of modern, post-apocalyptic looking, and it's like I was like, when I played it first, I was like, this is so unique. Like, why is no one talking about this? And I realized it's because we were just oversaturated with these like modern, dark, like just games.
Yep. And then, yeah, the PS3 was such a weird, because you had like that came out. It was like the Time Paradox game. I forget what the name of that one is.
The Guided Fate Time Paradox.
Yep, that one came out.
Time and Eternity, the Namco one that sucked.
Yep. Yeah, like, and then Mugen Souls. There was another one. What was the other mashup? It was like Mugen Souls, but it was also on the PS3. I think it was the same company. I am still like, I pulled it up to figure it out, but can't figure it out for the life of me.
Yeah, I'm brain farting there.
Oh man, it will come to me one day. Might not be this episode, but I'll comment it on the episode when it comes to me. But you just had, it was just kind of like a blurb of RPGs. I mean, at the time we had the Record of Agarest War games come out. Yeah, that was like the generation that doesn't get appreciated.
Well, it's interesting because most of the RPGs during that era were on either like DS or like PSP or Vita or 3DS. Like they kind of just skipped the PS3 era for the most part. Like, I mean, look at Dragon Quest 8 was a masterpiece, and then they decided rather than jump into PS3 or Wii or 360, they decided, now we're going to just make another DS RPG.
I mean, let's be fair. The Dragon Quest RPG on the Wii is not fun.
Which one? Swords?
Yep.
that was a game, all right.
That was a what?
I mean, there was 10, but 10 is an MMO, and we're not able to play it, unfortunately, at the moment. So
Here soon though, it's getting released offline version for us.
they've said this so many times, so I'm like very skeptical to believe them. So I'm hoping that it does come out and we can actually experience it.
Well, I mean, they're riding the high. Like I would, if you or I were there, like I'd continue to ride that high. Like everybody loves the Adventures of Dai, the anime. The game, it's good. It's not great, but it's a nice hold me over in between your big titles. Like ride that high. Like 11, honestly, if we talk about like triple A pure RPGs, Dragon Quest 11 and then Final Fantasy 16, those were the last two.
To a degree, like 11 to me is like that is like the love letter to like just JRPG fans who don't want to play like an Atlas RPG. And because Atlas, I'll give Atlas credit, they've stayed true to themselves basically their entire existence. But
Yep.
Atlas RPGs are a lot. I love them, but they're a lot.
It's like the PS4 was such a good time, but I don't think I can handle seeing Persona 5 get re-released yet another time.
I think 5 is finally done. If anything, they're gonna milk 3 now until it's dead. Part of me kind of wants a 4 remake now.
If it gets the love, that Persona 3 Reloaded got, all on board with it. If it gets the love that the 3 and 4 digital only that came out in like beginning of 2023, no, abort mission. Do not do that to us.
The only way I'd want it is a remake of 4 Golden using the reload engine, basically.
100%. Like that would be a beautiful game. And you want to talk about like a weird irony, the Vita. We didn't even really mention the Vita and all the gloriousness that came on the Vita.
The Vita, legitimately to me, so I am like one of the biggest Vita defenders there is. And the Vita to me is like legitimately the home of some of the most trash yet amazing JRPGs ever made.
I mentioned it when I said Ease 8 Lacrimosa of Dana. I want all of you to know.
It was a Vita game.
And literally got released for the PS5. Hey, we don't know what to do. Oh, cool. PS5.
We had The Legend of Heroes, Trails of Cold Steel. Like that started on PS3, was mostly known on the Vita, and that's since all been re-released on PS4, like an entire 4-game series. One of the biggest love letters to old school RPGs in a while, too.
I like love it or hate it. That series, like the Ease series, is literally one continuous story.
Yes, those 4 games you have to play from beginning to end, which unfortunately is kind of an aspect of the Legend of Heroes series in general. Like, because there's the Trails of in the Sky, like 3 trilogy, which all of those you kind of have to play one by one. The older games were a little different; those are kind of all over the place. But now there's like all the new ones that are coming out, and it's like, oh my god, it's so much RPG.
Yeah, like literally back on my shelf, you can literally see Trails Collection. It is nuts.
Yeah. Speaking of Vita games, like if you want to talk about the most obscure, like what is this? Criminal Girls.
Why did I know you were going there?
Because I bought those games for like 80 a piece, and I need to like talk about them.
To sum up Criminal Girls, for all of you who don't understand what Bill is referencing, I want you to imagine you're going on a trip. You've ingested probably 5 or 6 mushrooms at this point. You are seeing things that vary from being able to see sounds to monsters coming out of your closet. I want you to combine that weird feeling and condense it into a JRPG. And you have Criminal Girls.
Yes. And then it was so great it got a sequel.
Don't know why, but now take 12 mushrooms and you have
Yeah.
the sequel.
And then the company later went on to make Stella Glow.
I loved that game.
I need to get it again because my copy disappeared on me and I have no idea what happened to it.
Blame the move. It got lost in the move.
One of the moves, yes.
Now that like talk about a good tactical grid based RPG. Stella Glow was amazing.
And it's just funny because when I was playing it the first time, I'm like, what company made this? I'm like, oh, the Criminal Girls team. Good for them.
You went from psychedelic experience to, for you, serious RPG. Good job.
The Vita is hilarious to me too because like you get games like that, and then like this isn't a JRPG, but I have to bring this game up every time I bring up the Vita and weird shit. It had Drive Girls on it. Do you know Drive Girls?
Why are you making us go down a mushroom experience?
Well, because anytime I talk about the Vita, I have to talk about Drive Girls because Drive Girls is literally the beat 'em up where it is big anime waifus that turn into cars.
Yep.
It's a game. It's not good, but I love it.
That was honestly the Vita was the last the Vita released at a weird time where it didn't get the love it did. And I wish it would have because it probably would have been a relevant handheld up until the PS5 launched and might have had a successor. But that was the last real handheld or console where people took risks. Bill mentioned Drive Girls or Criminal Girls. Those are risks. If you release that today, hey, thanks for playing. Your company is gone. You've been absorbed by Microsoft or whoever.
The Vita also was like the home of like, let's put an RPG that nobody played the first time around and let's try again. Like obviously Persona 4 people played, but they decided let's make it even better and release it on the Vita. And hey, it's the game that people buy Vitas for. How about that?
Yep.
Disgaea 3 and 4, two amazing games. Let's make them better and put them on the Vita because the Vita can handle it.
The Vita was so ahead of its time. Like everybody, like obviously we know through the leaks and everything, the Switch 2 more than likely coming out probably around Black Friday. We know that. Yep. But if you look at the upgraded version, it's literally uses the same screen that a Vita used.
The original Vitas, the OLEDs.
Mm-hmm.
The nicest game screen on a handheld, I still think to this day.
100%. Like I loved the PSP, but it was a little small. And then you got the Vita, it wasn't small, and everything was gorgeous.
We'd mentioned them earlier. Vanillaware, Odin Sphere, Muramasa, and Dragon's Crown were all released on the Vita.
Well, Odin Sphere was also PS2, remember?
Well, it was PS2 originally, and then they ported it to Vita years later. Muramasa was Wii originally, and they ported it to Vita, and then Dragon's Crown was a dual release, I believe.
Yep. And then because of the Vita, because of the re-release to Vita, we were able to get Odin Sphere, Lefter Sphere on the PS4 as well. So if you think about it, and I want this to sink in for you, a lot of the major RPGs people that were on the PS4 and even some that are on the PS5 are Vita ports.
Yeah, it's like Demon's Gaze, for anyone who remembers that, and Demon's Gaze 2, the sequel made it to consoles. That's another unique one because it's like, oh, do you like old school dungeon crawlers? Well, here's this one with anime girls because all of these games have anime girls.
The first one's on console now too.
Oh, is it? Oh, cool. Nice.
I think here, I want to make sure I quote it to you properly because I know you're like me and you will probably search it. Yep, it is called Demon Gaze Extra and on the Switch and the PS4. So you're gonna have to pick it up.
At some point. Oh, we had also mentioned Hyperdimension Neptunia. All of those are also on Vita.
It is the Vita. We speak with our dollars. We speak with our wallet. That's one of the very few ways we as consumers can hold companies accountable. And unfortunately, not enough people spoke with their wallet by purchasing the damn thing.
Or games for it.
It the what could have been.
What's funny too is like the Vita is the one console I always bring up where I actually went on like a cross-state road trip for, because when Sony killed it, GameStop also gave up on it real fast and was putting everything in the bargain bins, like fire sale, like get rid of it. I went to 12 or so GameStops in one day, driving across Massachusetts, and just cleaned out their Vita libraries. Because
And if any of you are taking notes, what Bill is mentioning, probably within the next year and a half, that's going to be the PS4. So
it's already happening.
yeah, you'll still see them a lot on the shelves, but they're getting fewer and far in between. So
Well,
get it.
The real question is though, is GameStop going to make it that far?
So the deal with Microsoft is still there. Like Microsoft hasn't backed out, so I don't think GameStop will fail.
I'm just wondering if the GameStop will still sell games, because the games in GameStop are getting smaller and smaller every year.
I think they have to, and like the collectible store alone, I don't see that succeeding. Like we get collectibles because they're from our games or shows we like, whatever. I mean, like you can see pop figures back there. Got those at GameStop from New Girl. And while in that day when I had pre-ordered those and went and picked them up, that GameStop still had a copy of Trail of Cold Steel 1 and 2 sealed, like real sealed, not GameStop sealed, for PS4.
Yep.
Like because of that, I got that. I know a lot of people are leaving physical media, like Best Buy. Like you can't buy Blu-rays or DVDs anymore. Like if you go into a Best Buy now, it feels weird.
Yeah, it's like the only physical media they have is the games, and that is like a tiny little section shoved in a corner.
Yep. I think they have to, up until like I think GameStop has to do that, just because if they don't, the market is going to get super skewed. And I know it's not their responsibility for that, but until one, maybe two consoles from now, when everything is digital only, sadly, I think GameStop will still be around with games.
Yeah, it's interesting to me. Just I do appreciate the rise of retro stores recently. Like we've seen just like a ton of like retro video game or just retro media in general, like comics, DVDs, all sorts of stuff are popping up left and right. It's refreshing to see, but it's also kind of a sign that like the modern stuff is kind of on its way out.
Yep. It who I forget what random corporate person said it, but they were like, "We'll stream everything and you'll own nothing and like it."
Wasn't that the Ubisoft guy? He's been pretty bad lately.
Yeah, no comment. Ubi fail.
That and Mr. Doesn't work for Blizzard anymore or Activision. What's his name?
Bobby Kotick.
Yes, him. that guy.
Yeah, no, and don't take this as me telling all of you to go shell out thousands and thousands of dollars. Support physical, buy physical, especially when it comes to JRPGs. If you want to talk about something holding value and then maybe down the road you have like a big thing come up and you need money or you have an investment, Bill's collection easily $120,000 to $150,000, easily.
Probably.
Like, sorry to throw your collection out there like that. Mine about 85 to 90. If say, I get to a point I'm not able to game that much anymore and down payment on a house or eliminating all my debt, that cheap investment that you got into by buying them when they released pays in dividends. And then also, in the event everything goes the way of digital, physical media, it's nicer. Being able to pop a game in a PS2 or a PS3, play the game. Being able to pop a cartridge in my Super Nintendo, being able to legit play the game, not wait for a download or anything like that.
Oh yeah.
It's going to be something we miss sorely. So retro is inexpensive and expensive. So don't go in there thinking I'm going to get every single game, because you will hit your Suikoden 2s, your Dot Hat Quarantines, your Xenosaga 3s, your Lunar Eternal Blues. You're going to hit those walls. If you want the Misadventures of Tronbon, good luck.
The Holy Grail of Holy Grails, Panzer Dragoon Saga.
Or Albert's Odyssey.
Yeah, or my current white whale, Magic Knight Rayearth.
Those will stop you in your tracks. Those are investments at some can be over 1,000.
Yeah, if you want to get into collecting, just don't collect Sega stuff.
Facts. But for every one of those, you can get a Radiata Stories, $10 to $20. You can get a Dragon Quest 8 non 3DS, because that one's going for 80 to 90 right now. You can get the PS2 one for $10. Final Fantasy 12, if you want the PS2 version, $10. For every expensive one, there are like 10 not expensive ones.
Oh yeah.
And
there's a lot of RPGs we have not mentioned at all throughout this, because there's just so many. We might have to revisit this in the future at some point.
You know what? He's putting it in the universe. This is part 1. And I know it's not my show and I can't really claim that, but part 1.
I'm sure we'll do this again next time I need a solo episode in, because unfortunately we're about to hit the 2-hour mark, and that's usually my cutoff time for these. But there's so many other games to talk about and so many other stories, and honestly, one podcast isn't enough.
You know, I'm gonna speak this into existence, Bill. How would you feel? Obviously, I know we have the Gaming and Collecting Podcast Network, but you also have the 3DO experience that you do as well, and many other ventures. How would you feel one day, time permitting, we do the JRPG experience? And we pick a JRPG, and that's our review of the week.
That could be fun. It would probably have to be a more limited show, just because we have to just to keep up with everything. But it was like a little bonus thing. That could be interesting.
Look at that. I'm speaking ideas into other shows.
Nice. But yeah, so I think now this is probably the best point to kind of cut it off for now. So once again, I want to thank James for joining me for this episode. Would you like to plug your show again real quick, James?
Yeah, so you can find us on YouTube, the Top Tenor Show. Bill has all the links. Thank you so much for that, Bill. We go live with our first episode May 3rd, so that's a Friday. Tune in for an amazing episode, and we're going to be releasing every Friday. It's a lot of fun to create, and I'm excited. Like, I had a lot of fun with Games with John and James coming into this new show. I'm also going to have a lot of fun. Liv is awesome. She's a wonderful co-host. She's been a good friend of both Bill and I's for almost like over 2 years now, I think.
Yeah, 2022, I want to say, is when everything really started.
The Co-op Network, when it first came into existence. And it's just fun to create. If you enjoy a good list and you want to hear, like, if you can't tell between Bill and I, we have some very unique opinions when it comes to games and it comes to memorable moments that doesn't always go with the grain. And for me, I love it. So please come and check that out.
Nice. And I'll be sure to include all of those links in the description of this podcast. And with that, everybody, once again, thank you for joining us on the Gaming and Collecting Podcast. The Gaming and Collecting Podcast can be found on all your major podcasting platforms, particularly Apple Podcasts and Spotify. The videos are also now available on YouTube in both audio and occasional video form. And you can find all of our links at linktree/thebarberwhogames. And if you'd like, you can join the GNC Podcast Network Discord server, where you can find all info on GNC, the 3DO experience, Geek Addicts, talk gaming, anime, or just general nonsense. And with that, everybody, we will see you all later.
See ya.